welcome to Slayerfest 98. I'm your host, Ian Carlos Crawford, and welcome to our first 25th anniversary recording of Buffy Season 2. I feel ancient every time I say that any season of the show is 25, but here we are. And today I am joined by two wonderful guests. She makes iconic memes about American Girl dolls.
Hi, I'm Lydia. I'm also known as Kit Kittredge on Instagram and Twitter.
And he is a pop culture writer.
Hi guys, I'm Harrison Brocklehurst, and I'm a journalist from the top.
And Harrison, I feel like you and I became friends because of Buffy. Isn't that how we started following each other on Twitter?
Yeah, I can't remember if it was when I did my first character ranking thread ages ago, if that was when we started following each other, or if it was kind of before that, but yeah, I've been tweeting about Buffy for years and years, and I feel like we must have just come across each other like that.
Yeah, because I remember us DMing about Buffy.
Yeah.
The first time we followed each other. Harrison, do you want to give us your Buffy origin?
Yeah, I mean, my Buffy origin is so far back that I haven't even got a specific moment where I remember it starting, because I'm only 26, so Buffy came out just as...
Rude!
It came out just as I was pretty much born, but my first memory is I was at a game shop with my dad, and I was begging him to get me the original Xbox with the original Buffy game included, and that came out in 2002, so I must have been 6 then, and I was already a fan. So I've been growing up with the show, watching it kind of, I don't know, I guess I was probably just a bit bemused and enjoying it without really knowing the details as a kid, and then as I've rewatched it over and over again growing up and just discovering the nuances, and now obviously it's my favorite show of all time. And my friends sometimes send me a picture of whatever outfit Buffy is wearing in the episode, and I can name it and the season from the outfit. So that's the level we're at.
I feel like that's a superpower with us Buffy stans, is being oh yeah, that pink top, that's from this episode, knowing immediately where the outfit is from.
Or Sarah's hair as well, ultimate giveaway.
Yeah. Usually the hair is the first giveaway. Lydia, do you want to give us your Buffy origin?
Yeah, so I feel good that you're 26, Harrison, but I'm 24, so these episodes are turning 25. I'm a little bit younger than them, and my Buffy origin story wasn't quite as soon. I definitely remember my mom loved the show, and so I remember watching reruns and different episodes with her here and there. I just remember it being on in my house, but I watched it for the first time when I was in high school, which now has been 10 years ago, which is crazy. And I didn't really like watching old TV growing up because I just felt it didn't really hold up, and I found it kind of cringe, and the way they talked to women was kind of cringe. But I thought that Buffy was one of the only older shows that I really latched onto and loved, and I just started rewatching it. This is my first time rewatching it, and I'm currently on season 3. So
nice. It's funny because I do feel that same way. And I am older, but I grew up with those shows, and I have trouble going back to old shows, especially a 45-minute genre show, because usually those are the most dated of older shows. But I never feel that way with Buffy, right?
Yeah,
there's aspects of it that definitely haven't aged well, but it doesn't feel completely 1997 cringe, right? It just doesn't.
I think my thrill with going back to it is pretty much every time I do a rewatch, I watch it with someone who's never seen it before. I always do it with a new flatmate or anything like that, just never, or a boyfriend, lol, or anything like that. And I kind of watching those people who've never seen it still get so much from it now, and be so amused by the comedy and the writing and stuff. It just proves that it was leaps and bounds above the rest at the time, and still is.
Yeah. I've made every guy I've dated go through Buffy, and any roommate I've had go through Buffy.
Yeah, I'm the same. Because really, if they're going to be with us, and it's such a big part of our lives, come on,
right?
You gotta get on board.
You have to, yeah. So yeah, we're talking about when she was bad. It turned 25 on the day this is releasing, not the day we're recording. I think this gets a little brushed aside in the realm of when people talk about season premieres, but I do think this is a really good season premiere that had to do a lot of moving the pieces around to make sure we were good for the rest of the season.
Yep. And
I think it did it in a really good way. Lydia, how did you feel once you rewatched it?
Yeah, so I rewatched it not that long ago, maybe in the past month or so. But then rewatching it again, I really was thinking about it in that different way of how we were she really did wrap up sort of season 1, and you could sort of tell the production quality was higher. So there's a lot of stuff sort of going on and moving around. But I thought it was really impressive how they brought back, this idea of, we really do want to close off this idea that she faced all this trauma at the end of season 1. And I feel like a lot of shows don't have their characters process this trauma. And, because it's fiction and it's TV, she kind of gets through it in one episode. But the fact that they like really took the time to do that, and you see Buffy sort of like make these mistakes that any teenager would make, after experiencing some kind of traumatic, event, to have her like get to make those mistakes, I think was really, really cool and interesting to watch. I'm glad that they did that.
Yeah, I really do like, I mean, like you said, it's a TV show, so it's wrapped up in one episode, but I do like that we at least even have the one episode to be like, yeah, that would be traumatic for a 16-year-old who went through, like, that would be traumatic for anyone, but especially like a kid. Yeah, so I do really appreciate that. Harrison, how'd you feel when you rewatched it?
I like this episode, but I never ever feel like it really pushes into like a true wow Buffy episode kind of status. And I feel like you said, it puts a lot of cogs in motion, and I think it does that really well. But it's kind of, I don't know. There's part of me that always kind of never fully believes Buffy's behavior. Mainly because I don't think she ever acts out in that way ever again. And like with the other times when she's been upset or gone through something, I don't know. I feel like the kind of trauma part where she's like really distant and vacant, I really believe. But then when she's like, some of her behavior or like the way she says things in this episode, I'm always a bit, I don't know.
All right.
But I think it's a really solid episode, and it's a blast. It's a Buffy episode, but I just miss that sometimes. Like it doesn't ever get to that next level for me.
That's fair. And I do always say that, right? Even like a Buffy episode that isn't that good is still like a lot better than a lot of other TV shows, right? Like, but yeah, so this episode, I forgot that we got instead of previously on Buffy, it's like last season, and they do a pretty good job of like wrapping the season up in like 10 seconds. We open on a cemetery, like I think they do every single season. I don't know. Harrison, do you know, is that true? I think so, right?
Yeah, I think it is. Think about it, but I've never thought about it until this moment. I've never made the connection.
Because season 3, it's Willow, the fake out that it's Willow in the cemetery. But yeah, so we get Xander and Willow. They're kind of reminding us that they're telling us that Buffy wasn't there for the summer. They're doing a little cute like movie quote game. What do we feel about this dynamic? How do we feel?
I hate it. I'm very anti. I really dislike it. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't like that they like have this kind of chemistry because they are good friends, and you sort of see that relationship sort of grow. So like I hate how much they kind of make it work, but I think that's just the actors being good. I hate every second that they have this sort of like Willow pining over him because Willow's just so much better than him. Yes. And I actually do really like I don't know if like, can we do spoilers for the rest of season 2? Okay, cool. I really like how season 2 goes for both of them. I really like Xander with Cordelia, and I really like with Oz, even though like, they're not really the end game pairings there, but I do like them, especially in season 2. So having them together just makes me so frustrated.
Harrison?
Even though I completely don't see Willow and Xander ever together, obviously, I don't ship it, I don't care. But I do think when they have those like little flirty moments, they always happen so organically, and like I feel like they catch me, and I'm like, oh, that little moment, it really feels natural. Like, friends I've got with in the past or whatever, you don't have to think of yourself with them for like a long time, but like I love when that authentic kind of just like the little moment. Then it shows why they're not good when Willow tries to recreate it, with the ice cream thing. When it happens organically, it works, but when they try and force it, it doesn't. And I don't know. I feel like this whole episode particularly is really good at establishing their like long-term friendship. Like there's another, like you can tell they've spent all this time in the summer together, and it's really naturally like comes across. But even like later on, there's a bit where they like swap snacks really fast, and they just like chuck it to each other. They don't even say anything. And I think, this episode, but then the season as it goes, it's really good at developing that friendship dynamic.
See, I also really hate the implication that they would be together if Buffy wasn't around. Like that just annoys me. I don't like that. And that I feel like, they have that scene where she gets the ice cream on her nose and he's like, oh, your nose looks so tasty. And then she tries to recreate that later and it doesn't work because he's like looking at Buffy. Yeah. I just don't like it. It reminds me of like some of the ways I don't think Buffy is always the best friend, which I don't really think is I like the way that their friendship is portrayed, but anyway, everything about it makes me feel icky. And sorry, Ian, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no. I was gonna say that it's funny because watching it this time, I was like annoyed because I was like, oh, they do have good chemistry. Like I don't like them together, but I think you're right. It's the actors are good and they like. And I think even, I don't know if any of you read Evan Ross Katz's book, which I am quoted in, which I will never shut up about.
Yeah, I read it. It's really good.
It's really good. And like, right, they do talk about how they all were very good friends. Like the first, what was it, like 2 or 3 seasons, Harrison, I think, right? And that really does show here that like these two characters who like even retroactively, and I'm pretty sure when I watched it, I didn't want them together, but I'm like, oh, I hate this pairing, but they do have good chemistry. They go to kiss, they almost get there, and a vampire is there, and Harrison, who appears to save them.
Buffy, of course, with the iconic fourth wall break. That's
right,
like perfect way to open a season, especially like, oh, I love that bit so much. It's such a campy nod, but it works so well.
Right. I was gonna say, I feel like that's a very iconic Buffy entrance of her like looking straight at the camera saying "Miss me." Like
it's very you can sing along in Once More Feeling. I love it. I also look at this point we're still like, because I'm with my flatmate, we're up to season 6, so I'm like so kind of in the the adults now, whatever.
Yeah,
and I feel like every time I go back to watch these ones, it's always like, God, it's crazy how much of like a dangerous issue one vampire is to like. Well, if one turned up, it was like it could be literally game over. Like they're useless.
Yeah, and like the Master, if he were a villain in like seasons 5, 6, or 7, she would have defeated him at the end of the episode, right?
Yeah. He'd have got a double episode maybe at best.
Yeah, and like it's funny that we're saying like this is iconic because also Lydia, that reminds me, you saw that Sarah Michelle Gellar reposted your tweet on her story, right?
Yes.
Oh,
that was crazy. So Harrison, I don't know if you saw this, but and this is actually I think when Ian first like saw my account, I tweeted Buffy the Vampire Slayer remake, but it's just a bunch of people going around telling Sarah Michelle Gellar she's slaying. And that was very much the vibe of that scene too when she like comes in, like she is slaying. And Sarah Michelle Gellar did repost that. And it was truly one of the best moments of my entire life. I immediately sent it to my mom. I was like, oh my God, look at what happened.
It's so iconic. I feel like she's really made her social media presence a hoot at the moment. She's like an Instagram mom, but still kind of like a great sense of humor. I love it.
Yeah, and like, because the few times I think she's reposted like 2, maybe 3 of like Slayerfest things, but it's always like she screenshotted. I mean, the same way she posted yours, Lydia. I think that's probably so you and I can't ever DM her. Like she screenshots it because she's probably as smart about that. She's probably like, I know these Buffy fans; they won't DM me forever. So it's always like a screenshot of the thing. Still giving proper credit, but that because otherwise, I think it's like we could DM her, and I'm sure she does not want that.
My only Sarah interaction was when do you remember when she like first got Twitter? She was quite late on it. It was maybe like 2012 or 2013.
Yeah.
And like I remember when she first set up her account, I was like in college and I was pestering her like all the time, being like, I'm such a fan, blah, blah, blah. And then like when she did her first ever fan tweet, she just named loads of people and like at them was like, thanks for all the Buffy love. And that's my only time she's ever had. But I was
listen,
like, great.
That's huge.
It is. I feel like because she's so like she was so silent for so long, like having us fans be like, oh, she interact, like, I don't know, it really is. Like, I feel, I don't know that there's many other celebrities that I would be like that excited about. Because the first time she reposted something, someone had taken it and cut off my handle, and she reposted it from them and thought they did it, and I was fucking furious.
I would be too.
Yeah, any memes I've made on that happens, or any like videos and funny tweets,
right?
Happens, it's so hell.
And like, I messaged the person who did it, and I was like, "Hey, could you just credit me?" That's all I said because I was like, "I'm not gonna fight this person, whatever." And I was just like, "Hey, could you just credit me so she knows that I made this?" And he blocked me.
Oh my god!
No.
Classic.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Classic gay guy on Twitter. Like, I just like, of course. Luckily, I am like friendly with Tom Lank, and he replied to her saying, "Oh, my friend Slayerfest 98 made this." So then she credited me, and I was like, But yes, getting back to this episode, post credits, we see them. They're all walking together. Buffy does reprimand them for not even having a cross, and she is kind of right about that, right? Like at this point, I feel like sometimes I sound like I'm like an NRA fucking conservative, but I'm like, no, but it's Sunnydale. There are vampires everywhere. They should be carrying some kind of something with them, right?
Well, do you know what I did clock with this episode? Like, I feel like there's a bit later on where they're kind of talking about vampires they've seen over the summer or anything, and then someone makes a comment being like, "What? I thought we'd fixed it." And I think at this point, maybe the lore that we're kind of building was like they hadn't really fully established that vampires were going to be like an all-round problem. It's not like a every now and again.
Yes.
So I feel like I don't know. I feel like it's a bit of a plot hole maybe that they wouldn't have like seen a vampire over the summer. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, you're actually right. Like, I noticed that they definitely do set that up. Like, they go into school and like, they're all excited to see her. They have the Chibo motto discussion, which I feel like is iconic.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. But yeah, you're right. Miss Calendar and Giles have that discussion that sets up the rest of the seasons of the show. When he's like, yeah, we closed the Hellmouth, but it's not gone. And there's still the like demonic convergence magic, whatever. Yeah. And I feel like that is kind of like the explanation for, we wrapped it up last season, but we're doing more. And that's like fine. The thing I think Buffy's really good at is that kind of stuff where it's like, we'll explain away this plot hole in like one line of dialogue and it like really is fine, right?
We're all having too much fun to really care. So
yeah, like fucking whatever. We get they mention there's no vampires, blah blah blah. We do see a scene between Hank and Joyce that I had completely forgotten we ever saw them together. It's like almost weird watching them just like have a conversation because like the earlier seasons, Hank isn't as awful as a dad as he then becomes, right?
Yeah, I wrote in my notes "rare Hank" as well. I was like,
yeah,
you forget, and also him and Joyce are on really good terms here. They're just like laughing it up.
I kind of wouldn't have minded if that was the relationship for the rest of the show, right? Like I wouldn't have minded, like, because I know like a lot of my friends who like their parents are divorced, their like parents are cool like this, where it's like, yeah, it's fine, it's our kids, whatever.
Yeah.
And I would have liked that dynamic moving.
I wonder why they went with like the full AWOL storyline. Do you think the actor is just like less available, or like I don't know?
Right, I don't know.
Because it seemed like the Hank that we meet in the early ones isn't the kind of person he becomes. Like it must be quite a fast transition.
Yeah. Lydia, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know. Every time I see, I don't know. I don't think much about Hank, but I was just feeling so much for Joyce. I feel so much just this whole season too. Joyce's interaction with Buffy and her how she just doesn't quite get it, but she's trying so hard. I really do feel so bad for Joyce and in that scene too, and later in the episode, I'm just like, oh, like if only you got it, like if only. And I say this about like Euphoria now too. I guess this is like. Me being in my like mid 20s now, every time there's like a teenager in a show going through something, I'm like, I just wish that they had a trusted adult that they could talk to. And at least Buffy has like, like Giles and like Miss Calendar, and she does have some good adult figures, but like, oh, her mom, like I just wish she could talk to her mom.
Right, because she's not, I feel like that's incredibly accurate with Joyce. She isn't quite getting it, but she is trying, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she does care about Buffy. It's not like she's like completely like, oh, my fucking annoying daughter. She cares about her, but it's just not quite there yet.
But she makes one comment in that scene though that I thought was really harsh. She said something like, "Oh, I just hope she can make it through the school year." And I'm like, she said, all she's done is be quiet over summer. Why are you like writing her out of school already? Like, I feel like that was really dramatic from her.
I also feel like there's a lot of setup for the finale here because like saying that, and then like later Principal Snyder's like, oh, I can smell expulsion, and it's like, well, it doesn't happen at the end of the school year. We cut to Sunnydale. We get there's a lot of heavy-handed, wow, we had a long summer dialogue, but it's still, again, fun. I don't know, right?
Yeah,
I always find it really jarring that Willow and Xander like talk to Giles like they've not seen him all summer, and I guess at this point they wouldn't be close enough that they would hang out with like an adult at this point. But like I feel like knowing what's to come, it's like they didn't see him for like 2 months,
right? Yeah. I feel like, right, like 16, 17-year-olds wouldn't have phone numbers of their, like, adult librarian.
No. It's like, when does the transition happen that they become, like, fully pals? You know what I mean? 'Cause it must be 2 and 3, like, enough.
Yeah, I think 3.
I was just gonna say, my big takeaway from, like, them coming back, like, and into the school and, like, that whole scene was just, like, the fashion and, oh my goodness, just, like, how, fashion is so cyclical. Like, these cycles exist in years of 2025, I guess. But when I first watched Buffy, I remember it feeling very out of date because I probably watched it in like 2012, around then. So by that point, this sort of idea of, I don't know, the fashion just felt very dated to me at the time, but now watching it, it feels so on trend. Like it feels so like with the moment. And Miss Calendar's wearing this little midi skirt and her little leather jacket. And it was such a moment. And like Cordelia's lip liner, just little like fashion moment in this scene is sending, and like, even, and this, I don't think this scene, but like I note this in other places, and I've just been noting this in general in my watch back, but Willow's like low-key take on like kidcore with like the primary colors and the beaded necklaces, like that is so in right now. And that was just like my big sort of like, that's what I was looking at in that sort of scene.
I love how like depending on like what season or like what year you're in when you're watching it,
that's true.
I remember at one point like season 6 was like really cool, and now I watch it and I'm like, oh no, like that is so out, like not the vibe right now.
Give it 5 years.
For our Angel coverage, Summer Bishel is one of our co-hosts from The Magicians, and she's constantly saying, she's like, I'm waiting for all of the like chunky things to come back in style. Cause like we're in Angel season 1 and there's a lot of like chunky things or like layers. And sometimes Cordelia still has the butterfly clips. And I feel like you are right. This season 2 fashion is like very much in right
It's
now.
so cool. Yeah.
Because a thing that I always felt was outdated was like how baggy sometimes like even Buffy's pants would be. But now that is the trend, right?
Yeah, I would wear everything Xander wears at the moment. Like every like cool t-shirt, everything looks so like East London. Honestly, I live in East London, so every time I walk around here, I'm like, oh, everyone looks like Xander.
Xander, I like the idea of Xander being high fashion.
Yeah, Xander core in London right now.
Yeah. So we like get them all. We get Giles and Principal Snyder, which I do like. When Principal Snyder's like. Giles says, like, have you ever considered another profession since you hate children? And he's like, someone has to realize. And then he's like talking about them being hormonal. And we see Giles and Miss Calendar. I kind of forget going through season 1 for the 25th anniversary. I had forgotten Miss Calendar's only in 2 episodes in season 1 because she pretty quickly this season, right, becomes like one of the main supporting characters. And I feel like she's in most of the episodes till she dies, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
She has such good chemistry in her first like appearances, though, that I feel like even in I Robot You Jane, it feels like she's always been there. There's something about her, her line delivery. It always just feels so. This is a character that we want to see more of, like straight away.
Yeah, and like it's funny because she was the like modern character, and now like when she's like talking about computers, it just sounds so ridiculous.
Oh, it's so funny to hear her talking about like research and just like things on the internet. Like all of that is so funny. But I will say, I love Miss Calendar. I love seeing Giles happy. I love Giles.
Yeah.
And again, as this idea of like, oh, he's her trusted adult. Like, I'm so glad that she has that. Like, that's honestly something I also think that makes the show sort of like special and kind of realistic. But I love seeing him happy. Like, I love them together.
Yeah.
I was so sad when she left. Yeah.
I clocked on this when I watched it today, like the rewatch. I forget how much of like a class A flirt she is. She's so good. Like, the glint in her eye. I watch it and I'm like, oh, I'm turned on by her. Like, Jesus.
No, she is sexy, and she's got that line where she's like, "It depends on the book." Because he's like, "Oh, it's so boring that I read books all summer." She goes, "It depends on the book." I was like, "Oh my god, hello."
Also, I always think I remember when I was younger and I watched this episode, and she says about like going to the festivals and stuff, and I was like, she's too old to be at these festivals. Like, what the hell? When I was a kid, obviously, and I watched it, and I'm like, she's probably my age. Of course she's going to festivals.
Right. I was just about to say she probably is like maybe 30, maybe 25.
Yeah.
But yeah, as a kid, I mean, I always thought of Giles as like, I think in my brain he was like 60, but he's like definitely not that old.
They do age him though in like how twee he is like at the start.
Yeah.
Like, obviously they kind of cool him up, but I mean, I think you see in like Band Candy how fit he really is when he like gets into that white.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay.
So yeah, we get a lot of the summer catch-ups. The Scoobies are excited to see him and Miss Calendar. Buffy is not. She kind of just, I don't even think she says hi to him, right? Like she doesn't really say anything.
Yeah.
We do get the explanation of, we get the Hellmouth explanation, it's closed, but there's still the demonic conversion. And I do like when he says, oh, we can put off training. And she's like, I'm good. And we get that like very 90s training montage.
Love it.
Yeah. How much of that, like that can't be CGI, right? Someone's doing that. How much CGI did they really have? Like, were they really like spending money on? Is that like a stunt double? I really want to know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's
Sophia Crawford. Is that her name?
I think, yes.
Yeah.
And she's doing all that, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Right? Like those are, it like, it's cheesy, but like those are, I couldn't do any of that shit.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
She punches that like board to death, which is kind of like seeing the first hints of like her rage and her like trauma being there.
Yeah. I love that the Friar Tuck staff is back as well. You know, she's like, I'm not going to be fighting Friar Tuck in the other episode.
Yeah.
She's like there with it again.
Then we get a quick cut to the vampires. We see that they are now following the Anointed One, which this episode actually does a pretty good job of like keeping that the plot, even though we don't really see them that often, and I don't need to, right? It's like, we get what they're doing, doesn't matter. We'll get to them at the end. And like, that works. And I think it's a testament to how interesting these characters are and how good the actors are, right? Because there is a lot of them talking in this episode. Like, there's not that much action. but it's all fun to watch, right?
I think this episode really just takes like a mature stride. Like straight away, it just feels like a slight shift, and we've got more time to kind of. I think because season 1 was such a shorter season,
Yeah.
for this one it just feels like instant breathing space where we're like actually just watching these characters, feel things and be concerned about each other and like what's going on. Whereas I feel like in the other ones, it was either Monster of the Week or the Master of a like arching plot. So we never kind of got this chance to really, watch these people really live with each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And so after we get the vampires, we cut back to Sunnydale High. They're in the lounge, which I read in the like trivia of this episode. They built that set for this episode, and then it's the first time they use it, and then we do see it for like the rest of their high school career. Giles arrives, and Lydia, what happens when Giles arrives?
I'm sorry, I'm looking through my notes, and I have. Oh, this is the scene where you find out that she's asleep because Giles comes at her and is trying to choke her, and all of a sudden, he's like talking about how she's not a good slayer. All right, I found it.
And she pulls off his Giles mask, and it's the Master underneath. Which, fun fact, is David Boreanaz in the Master makeup.
Oh my god!
Is it really?
Yeah,
that's wild.
That's so funny.
And then she wakes up and, oh boy, Angel is just standing in her bedroom.
Okay, it's giving Twilight. Like,
right?
I did not like think, because I definitely read and like consumed all the Twilight sort of media before I engaged with Buffy. So then when I was like watching Buffy, first of all, I'm an Angel girl. I just something. I think I just like, because I'm an Edward girl too, I think you just show me the first person I'm supposed to love and then I can never love anyone else. I think that's what's going on.
That's very fair.
What's going on with me, but I love him so much. And I love the idea of him being like this like broody protector, like in her window, but also like giving her space when she needs it. And like, he really does think that she's like strong and doesn't need his help. But no, him stalking her in the window, it was giving Edward Cullen.
That's so funny that you say about like the Twilight things. I remember like obviously being a Buffy fan and Twilight coming out, and people used to make like edited pictures of, when Edward and Bella are like on their first date, and they used to like Photoshop Buffy with the crossbow in the middle of them and stuff.
Yes.
It used to be so much like, I remember when vampires didn't sparkle and like all that kind of stuff.
I literally don't. I don't remember when vampires didn't sparkle. That's my problem.
But so he kind of just like, she's like, is this a social call or lunch hour? She's being like really shitty with him. He kind of is just telling her that the Anointed One is assembling this gang. The thing I do like, and Lydia, I'm sure I do like that before he leaves the window, he's like, I missed you. And then, right?
I wrote, I missed you. And then in all caps, I wrote, damn. Just like, oh, that got me.
So Lydia, it's funny that you would say that whoever is shown to you is like, okay, I love that one forever. I'm very, especially on Buffy, like whoever's in front of me that Buffy likes, then I like. And I'm like, sure. Like I don't get the bane of my existence is people arguing in Slayerfest mentions about which boyfriend is more toxic, because they're all fucking toxic. Like,
they're all bad.
Agree.
But like whenever I'm like, especially when I've been revisiting these, because I tend to lean more towards Spike, but then when I revisit this, I'm like, wait, I think I lean more towards Angel. But I think it's just kind of the thing you said. It's like whatever's in front of me that we're supposed to love. And she has good chemistry with both. She has good chemistry with anyone who's supposed to be a love interest, because Sarah Michelle Gellar does not miss.
So true.
So I'm just always like, okay, like even with Riley, until he gets bad in season 5, I'm like, this was fine.
You know what? The start of season 4, her chemistry with Riley is amazing.
It really is.
I like knocking the book, and it's so rom-com, and like the outside chats, and they can like it's really good.
Yeah,
and you really do root for them. I do anyway.
And I always say that at the start. Like, he actually is pretty charming at the start. It's not till 5 when it's like, oh, this dude sucks.
The toxic masculinity jumped out in season 5. But Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And it's like, her mom is dying, dude. Fucking relax. Yeah. Like, she didn't call you. So, sorry, I went on my rant. The next day Joyce is driving her to school. I do think that's a kind of iconic shot as well of her with the sunglasses looking out the window.
Okay, but that shirt, I was like tracking that shirt, because I also wrote down like those sunglasses, that shirt, that little crochet pink moment, like so cute. She's wearing a different outfit when she goes to school.
Wait, really?
Yeah, and then that's the outfit she's wearing later in the episode. So I think maybe that scene was supposed to be like later, but then when she gets to school, she's wearing like a brown like trouser and a white little tank top, and just like totally different outfit when she's at school.
That is so rogue. I always assumed it was the same. I always thought it looked, I don't know.
You're right. Wait, and that pink top is the one she wears at the end of the episode.
Yeah. It must have been that they were filming on whatever day.
Yeah. I literally have... wait, hold on. Is it? Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. And then...
I never would not have noticed that if I wasn't taking notes for a podcast. Like, it just never would have occurred to me. But because I was doing that and taking notes for this purpose, I did notice.
It's funny because the way I just looked at it was because I screen record every episode and I watch them for like quote unquote content. And I just like fast and I was like, yep, because there it is. And then it disappears in the next scene. That's so funny. So yeah, Joyce is kind of trying her best, but Buffy's not. But I like that Buffy just glares at her when she's like, would you tell me what's wrong if I asked? And she just stares.
I absolutely love this scene. I think it's so good. I think it's just a little moment, but it's like just says everything it needs to say. It's really, it really hits my spot. I can't even put my finger on it. It just works so well for me.
And I do buy them. They have good mother-daughter chemistry.
100%.
Buffy arrives at school in a different outfit. The Scoobies meet her at her locker. This is when we learn Shibamato's playing the bronze.
Okay, I've got so many questions. I think this is where, like, because I wasn't, watching it in the 90s. Is that a popular band? Like, was Buffy pulling, like, bands that were popular at the time? Were bands that were on Buffy getting more popular?
They were.
I need to know.
I know that question too, because I can't gauge how famous they were at the time.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time like an actual famous band was on the show, right?
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. They were. Buffy pulled like kinda. It'd be like you've maybe heard of that band before. Is the like bands that they would pull, and Chibo at the time was like a big get for Buffy because they were like vaguely famous.
So was it realistic that they would be at the other thing that like the bronze, and we can get to this when we get to the bronze. I've got so many questions about the bronze. Is it because I'm from Kentucky and like did not like have fun things to do growing up, or like are there bars for high schoolers? Are there like what's going? Was that like a realistic grab? Do you think like these like this level of like band to be at this like I don't know whatever the bronze is in wherever in California they're located?
It's like half coffee shop and like cakes and half like club.
Yeah. I think I can buy it for California. I mean, I grew up in Jersey and there was one club that was like all ages, but like you had to be 16 and above, but it was all ages. And I remember it was in like this like half run down shopping center where most of the places were closed. And the one at the end was like the club. But I never went because like,
Sure.
I don't know. I especially wasn't that cool as a teen. And like, I always imagine it being something like the bronze, but way less cool. But like, I could buy that a place that's right outside of LA or close enough to LA that Buffy and Angel can drive back and forth sometimes that like they might be able to get a bigger band, I think. I don't know.
My question is like, is it camp? Like I couldn't tell you.
I feel like Buffy often lives in that middle ground of like, is this camp? Right? Like, and sometimes it is, sometimes it's just like silly. The thing I like about this scene is when Cordelia approaches them, right? We start to see, and I mean, we saw it in Prophecy Girl because she does help them without blinking, that Cordelia's like, she's not coming up to them to be shitty, right? Like she calls them the Three Musketeers. It's not, they're like, is that an insult? And it's not really, she's not trying to, she's just saying like, you guys hang out all the time, and
it's just the tone she says it is like she's so used to giving them insults that like she's doing something fine. It's just like in bully mode.
And I like that she seems like curious, right? She's like, "Oh, did you fight any demons?" Like she wants to know like the demon gossip.
I wrote down this too. I love that she's kind of like getting into the group again. Like she's really planting the seed that she's going to be like, helping out more.
Yeah,
this is where I wrote down lip liner. So those are my notes. Just says lip liner. It was great.
I mean, Cordelia always looks fantastic.
I'm a big Cordelia fan.
Okay, I was Harrison. I assumed you were. We're both gay men here. Lydia, that's what I was going to ask your thoughts on Cordelia. She's great, right?
No, I think Cordelia is so great, and I think again, this is one of the things that makes Buffy sort of hold up well. This idea that they show like different ways that girls can express themselves in high school. So like there's Willow and Buffy and Cordelia, and all of them are so different, but you don't it doesn't pit them against each other. And I think in some shows where you have like a strong female character, you'll have this like girly girl or this shy girl, and they'll be really like that kind of femininity is like separate from strength. But I think this show does a good job of being like, look, these are like three very different girls who are all like in different ways feminine, who all like girly things, but are all kick ass, and like they are sometimes kind and they are sometimes mean, and they have friends and they are strong, and I just love that. And I love Cordelia, and I love almost all of the women of Buffy.
Same.
Even the worst ones, I'm like, I stand.
Well, Lydia, I need to know, because I feel the same way. So much so that I ended up defending Kennedy a lot when we were recording for season 7, because I feel like she's not my favorite. I don't love her, but like she's fine, and I don't understand the hate. And I always ended up being like, no, but she's not that bad. She's just like whatever. She's like a hot young top who wanted to lay Willow out at the end of the world, and like, why not, right?
That's exactly
no, I very much agree. I think that relationships can be complex, and it doesn't have to be like perfect to be interesting or good or and I don't think female characters have to be perfect to be interesting or good. And no, I agree with that.
I actually think that's why the characters of Buffy are so good, because none of them are perfect, or like, even when we say before, like, Buffy's not a good friend to Willow all the time, or blah, blah, blah. It's because these characters, we love them so much because the flaws are so what make them, realistic people who are, you can root for.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I find myself, did either of you watch the Chucky series that came out last year?
No.
So I find myself, anytime there's a mean girl, I want her to be Cordelia. I want her to have layers. I want her to be more nuanced. And I kept, there's like the kids that play the kids are actually like 15, so they look a lot younger. And I kept finding myself wanting the like mean girl character to like have that turnaround where she's like got more depth. And by the end, she like joins them in fighting Chucky, but like she never quite got there. But I find myself in shows that I like, I always want the mean girl to be like Cordelia, where it's like, yeah, so she can like insult you, but doesn't mean she's like a terrible person, or like there's times when she is nice because, like you said, everyone has layers and shit. Yeah, Buffy spoiled me in so many ways with this. So then Buffy insults Cordelia and is like, oh, you won't tell anyone my secret, and I won't tell anyone you're a moron. And the thing I also like about this beat is Cordelia isn't really that pressed about it, right? Like, it seems like Xander and Willow are more like, what the fuck? And Cordelia's like, what's wrong with her? Whatever.
See, this is one of my issues with this episode, and like my general, how is everyone reacting to Buffy's behavior? Because I don't think this is like way out of like Buffy's normal tone of voice she speaks to Cordelia. People act like she's just told her to like really fuck off or something, but it's like, I think Buffy's been this flippant with her before. Like, I don't really think it's as bad as they all react to it. Like, well, especially Willow and Xander.
Yeah. Lydia, what do you think?
I don't know. There's something about like, being called a moron. That's pretty aggressive. I do see what you're saying, that they're kind of like that in general. But I think that you're right, that Cordelia is just sort of like, that's just like how I talk to people like that sometimes. So I'm not like that offended when she talks to me. And I sort of see that, later in the episode where she sort of like comes out and is like, hey, you're being a bitch right now. And like, I'm not really coming at this in a place of judgment because I too am a bitch. But I feel like that was sort of like I see you moment, but like, Jesus.
You are right. And we'll get there, but yeah, I love that. So then we cut to the bronze. Before that, we see that the vampires are digging up the master. Harrison, I have a question for you. I couldn't remember, and I was like looking in like trivia for this episode. Do we ever get an actual explanation why the master has bones and no other vamp, including the uber vamps, have bones that are left? I
always just thought it was written our way as like, oh, he's so old, he's left bones. Like that's all I've ever kind of taken it as. But then I think the uber vamp is a bit of a plot hole there that they don't.
Yeah, okay.
But that's all I've ever kind of known. Well, yeah, I've never heard anything else.
Yeah, because that is the logic I've always heard. But like, then the uber vamp should leave bones as well, right?
Yeah. Maybe they were just like, look, there's going to be so many of these guys, we can't be arsed with any bones.
Yeah, there would have been so many bones everywhere. So we get Willow and Xander are a little bit worried. They're talking. Well, Xander is more oblivious, and Willow is more observant, which tracks. And I do like that. I like that, like, he's kind of like just anxious and waiting for his crush, and she's like, I think something's wrong. Which will be like that trio's dynamic for the rest of the show, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Buffy walks in, she encounters Angel, and How does that go, Lydia?
You keep asking me questions, but I don't have any notes. Ask Harrison.
I'm sorry.
Ask me other things.
Harrison, how does it go when she sees Angel?
She sees Angel, and then she goes over to Xander and takes him for a sexy dance whilst Angel watches. And she's pretty cruel to kind of everyone in the room because Willow obviously fancies Xander, and then Buffy's like dancing with him and then trying to make Angel jealous, but using Xander's like attraction to her for her own benefit. It's all this. I'm so conflicted about this scene because in many ways I watch it and I'm like, this is quite iconic. She's being like, she looks amazing. The song is so good. Like, it's just such a great Buffy kind of music moment for me as well. Like, really iconic one. But I just don't believe this behavior from her. I just don't. And I know that she's going through it, but I just don't know if she'd go through it and act out in this way. I just don't find it convincing.
Neither do they. That's funny because neither do they. That's the whole thing that Willow's like, no, she's literally possessed. Like, this is so unlike her that she is. That it must be a demon. No, I don't like it because, she's not being a great friend. And as much as I really am not pro, like, Willow Xander, I'm not pro Buffy Xander. No, I was so just like kind of like disappointed in her in this moment. But I think like that's like the point, she's doing something wrong and it is really out of character and we are supposed to be mad at her. But mad at her I was.
And so she kind of like makes the dialogue is what kind of is like when she's like, don't you wish I would say thank you? I'm like, oh, I don't know. That's the only spot where I'm like, I don't know about this.
It's a bit like, I don't know. It just feels like a lot. Like, and I just don't know if I fully commit to it. But
it almost feels like a little porny. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And Xander's faces are like giving like, I'm very erect right now is the vibe.
Yeah. And the thing I do like is that we do cut to Cordelia and she's observing, right? Mm-hmm. Buffy leaves and okay, now Lydia, what happens when Buffy leaves the bronze?
Yeah, so this is when Cordelia like comes out and like chases her and says, "You're really campaigning for Bitch of the Year," which I think is such a funny line. I think that's such a good line for her to say that. And then the implication is Buffy being like, "Oh well, like I don't think I could win it from you." And I just think I think that scene is so good. I really think that both of those actresses are really bringing it. And this whole idea of Cordelia being the one to call Buffy out for being a bitch, I think it's more meaningful than it coming from almost anyone else. Because she's like, it's not coming from a place of judgment. Like, I see you. I would have, I may have done this too, but I just want you to know that like, you're being a really bad friend, which I thought was so good.
And like, that's one of the things I love about Cordelia is that she's brushed off as like, quote unquote, ditzy often. And like, we've been going through Angel season 1 and like, that is most of the season is like Angel and Doyle first being like, oh, Cordelia, you don't know. And then she's right. And then it's Angel and Wesley being like, oh, Cordelia, you don't know. And then she's actually right. And I like that we get this scene, especially early on in the show, where your reading is perfect, Lydia. Her being like, listen, you are being an asshole. I don't care. I'm just letting you know that like your friends are going to stop being your friends if you continue like this. Yeah. And like, I like that even at the end when Buffy's like, I think it's time you start minding your own business. Even Cordelia's like, it's well past that. And so she's like, bye. Like Cordelia's just like, that's fine. I'm going to leave. Like, I don't care. And I don't know. I think it's it's such a good scene. Harrison, how do you feel about it?
I love the scene. I feel like interesting when you say about how they play like Cordelia's intelligence. I do feel like sometimes they play it ditzy, but in like the school and stuff, she never really like, she gives good answers in class when we see her in like class sometimes. And she's never fully played as like, the really gorgeous one who's the really thick. Like she's quite tuned in. She's like a smart girl, you know what I mean? And I love the way she's just like, whatever's causing the Joan Crawford to get over it. Like she's just straight to the point. It's so satisfying. And I feel like that's really the crux of the episode. And probably the first part where Buffy starts to kind of get over it a bit because she's probably like, if Cordelia's saying this to me, I mean,
I feel like even though she's like posturing, like, I don't give a shit. It's like she walked away and was like, oh, God damn it. If Cordelia's saying it, like, but right at the end of that scene, Cordelia goes to leave and she gets captured. She finds herself in a abandoned warehouse where Miss Calendar is unconscious on the ground. And we cut to Sunnydale the next day. I do like the Willow spelling out bitch and Xander saying, what's a bitch?
Love.
I wrote down BICTH. I don't know if you've seen that vine.
And I do like Giles also is pretty tuned in, right? Like he what is the line he says? Like, as you Americans might say, she might have some issues. Like,
Yeah.
And then he pronounces issues very strangely. I cannot do it. I do not have a British accent, but it's very funny.
So he says, like, you know, he's starting to suspect it's like because of what happened with the master and her dying. Then Buffy enters, they have to cover, but she tells Giles that the master's grave was robbed. And Giles tells her that, like, these vampires might be doing a spell to bring the master back. And I do really, again, I like that, like, that is the, like, moving action plot, but it's almost a B plot, right? Like, the A plot is, like, her dealing with her trauma from the previous season. As they're starting to argue, because she, like, says something very, like, oh, it's no civilians, please, when Willow chimes in, and Xander's like, that's enough. Snyder comes in, tells them to get to class, tells Giles to get to work. They're later meeting at the library. A rock flies through the... I missed this. I was literally watching and I was like, wait, I forget, how do they know Cordelia got kidnapped? They didn't see it. And I had to, like,
just a
rewind.
Tell you what, though, I feel like this is really the thing Buffy does great. You know when, like, Buffy enters the scene and Giles is like, trout, yes, is a fish. I just think those little lines are so funny and Buffy is so good at them, like...
Yeah.
So many great moments like that. And I love like later on when Willow's like about trout. Like I just love that they always like string it along.
The show is very good at that. So they find out that Cordelia's been kidnapped. Buffy kind of refuses to work with them, right? They're like, well, this is a trap. We got to, like, do some research. She's just like, I'm going to go. Cordelia could be dead.
Yeah, no one seems to be worried enough about Cordelia, in my opinion. She's like immediately like, this is Cordelia's bracelet. It's a very nondescript bracelet. Like, okay, Buffy, like, I didn't know you guys were like that. So she, like, immediately was like, this is definitely Cordelia's, no questions asked. And then, but just as again, it's like, nah, it's fine. Like, the only one, Xander's like, Cordelia could be dead, but like that's it. Like, doesn't even like, isn't like, oh my god, let's go right now. Just like,
oh, and I gotta mention this before we keep going. I do like Snyder telling Giles it's almost like a sixth sense. He can smell. And Giles saying, I do believe that's one of the five. Like, I think that's a very good beat.
I love all that little dynamics in the early episode whenever they're doing like these weird twosome things. Like, as soon as I feel like Snyder enters in the puppet show, I love all that little kind of weird, like, forced work chats.
I really like Snyder. I think he's someone that's fun to watch. Like, he's one of those characters that's just like you love to hate. He's so just like out there and silly.
Yeah.
It gives Sue Sylvester, you know.
He thinks he's the big bad, but I love that he's just this like petty villain that we have to endure sometimes. Like,
yeah, like Giles cannot stand him, and like, but he's Giles's boss, so Giles is like sometimes like humors him, but never does more than just humor him, right?
Yeah.
And you're like a grown man. Why are you beefing with this 16-year-old? Like, what is going on? Like, I don't understand. He's always like, you're up to something. It's like, okay.
You are right. It's like, sir, you are an adult. She is 16. Fucking relax.
What did she do to you personally?
I think when we see in the Candy episode, like, his throwback vibe, like, he makes so much sense that he's like, you know, was so overlooked.
Yes.
This like little excited teen, and now he's just this like vengeful, hard-faced man.
So she goes to the bronze. Angel follows her, and we get this interaction is so weird when she's like, do it, kick my ass. And I'm like, what the fuck?
I was like, it's hot.
Yeah, it is hot.
I love it.
They get in there. There's only one vampire. Buffy immediately realizes it's not Cordelia. Cut to the library, and Giles is like, it's a trap, just not for her. And there's a million vampires there. So Buffy comes back in to the library. Everything's all distressed. I really hate Xander's lines here, even though he's not completely incorrect. I'm just like, tone it down a little. Like when he's like, if anything happens to Willow, I'll kill you. And my first thought was, oh, good luck trying. Like, give me a break.
True. And it's just this like, stop trying to make Xander Willow happen. It's not gonna happen. Like, quit.
But he does tell her, like, if you had waited. I do like the thing that Buffy is very good at, Buffy the character, I mean, and the show, but like, our Slayer is very good at like knowing when it's not time to bicker, right? So she's just like not arguing with him and asking him questions as he's like insulting her.
Yeah.
And that feels true to Buffy, the character, right? That she's like, no, I got to get like business, right?
She's good at rising above it when she needs to, definitely.
Yes.
And do you know who's not good at that? Xander.
Xander, yes.
Unlike when Cordelia is gone and they can still wait a couple hours.
Oh, yeah.
Seriously, they're like, well, we'll take our time. So then we cut to this factory. We see Cordelia, Miss Calendar, Giles, and Willow hanging upside down because the spell was, what was it? Like whoever was physically closest to the master. And they were all in the library when he was staked by the like pieces of the table. I do like that Buffy and Xander and Angel come in and was it like Angel or Xander's like, what's our plan? And she's like, I'm just going to kill them all.
Yeah. You know what I absolutely love, and I only clocked it on this rewatch, and I feel really slow for not thinking about this earlier, but I love that in this episode, the trap is like pretty much the exact same trap that Angel pulls for her in Becoming.
Oh,
Loads of and then they ambush the library. It's actually like the same thing, and I really never clocked that at the bookend of the season that is like a thing.
Maybe I don't think I ever clocked that either, honestly. Yeah. And you're right. That is like basically the same. We just don't have the like iconic slow motion run this time around.
Exactly. And I love the thought of obviously like Angel was with her when it happened. So I love the thought of him like being like, oh, I could use that again, like, you know, in the future when like he's lost his soul. I think that's really interesting. And I can't believe I never clocked that before.
Yeah.
What I wrote down about this scene was Xander and Adria are barely whispering. Like, do vamps not have good hearing? Like, I feel like in most lore, it's like, oh yeah, they've got super senses. They can like, they're strong and they can hear things. But like, they're like in the same room. Like, we can hear the vampires very clearly. And again, they are barely whispering, just very loudly talking about their plan. And I was like, what? They not.
Also, I feel like just before we move on, I feel like we should talk about the necklace torture things. I think that's really graphic and like hardcore for like early Buffy. You know when she puts the in the throat and it like sizzles. I think that is wild.
It's like weirdly brutal for Buffy. Yeah, and that's how she gets that vampire woman to talk.
I love it. I'm not sure how she spoke there with a burnt throat, but
I was thinking that like they might burn her tongue off or something.
Literally.
But so I like this fight scene. I love a Buffy fight scene where Buffy's like annoyed and confident. Like those are kind of my favorites. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we get that image. It's in the credits when she like slays that vampire from behind and she kind of easily disposes of all these vampires.
She's literally slaying. Like, she's literally slaying. And so my question for you, like, y'all is, like, Buffy super fans. I'm dying to know. So when, like, the word slay started entering the, like, cultural zeitgeist, were you guys just, was Buffy all you could think about just all the time? Like, anytime anyone says slay, you're like, Buffy.
Yeah, and when TikTok sound was viral, you know, it's like, slay through the day, that one. I remember, like, people editing it with, like, people dressed as Buffy doing it and stuff. It's crazy.
I can remember just like because it was in that time when Buffy hadn't come full. Like I feel like now Buffy is pretty like popular in like it's part of the pop culture history, and I feel like it was when people didn't talk about it as much. So I was like the lone gay, always like being like, "What about Buffy?" When people were talking about that, and they'd be like, we get it, you like Buffy," and I'd be like, "Bud, right?" I do like her interaction with like the leader-ish vampire guy, how he gives this speech and she's just like, so you're gonna kill me or are we making small talk? Like that's the Buffy liners that I fucking love.
Yeah. She
kills him and we see that the Scoobies are all safe. Willow says it's over and Xander says not yet, and we see her pick up the mallet. Sarah Michelle Gellar, to go back to your tweet, Lydia, right? Like this is one of those scenes. It's like, fuck, she is selling this so well. And there's no dialogue.
She's so good.
Right?
She's so good. There's no word other than she's like, it's just so perfect. It's so apt.
I find it so hard when people like when people think about Sarah Michelle Gellar as an actress and they kind of, who haven't watched Buffy and they think of her more as like Daphne or whatever, or kind of like horror roles. And sometimes in my head, I'm like, I really wish you guys knew that she is like Academy Award level, like amazing. She is so good. Like every episode, she's just something that's like jaw-droppingly good, honestly. And it frustrates me so much that I feel like the wider non-Buffy world doesn't fully give her flowers for like how great she is. And I hope later in life, now her kids are a bit more grown up, that she's going to get this renaissance because she deserves it so much.
Yes.
I feel like people are giving it more to her now that they're giving it less to Josh.
Yes.
Reed. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I think so much of like, I think of Buffy and fandom and how many like fandoms like can hark back to like how big Buffy is in fandom. And even like, you know, being in college, there would always like, I was telling my partner about this. I feel like Buffy is one of the most academic fandoms. Like there's so many like think pieces and articles about Buffy. I think maybe the only one that I think might be remotely close is like Lord of the Rings. I think there's lots of like articles and classes about Lord of the Rings. But I think so much of that, like they gave so much credit to Joss, and I think the now folks are not doing that. So they're talking more about how much of Buffy was Sarah Michelle Gellar slaying, and as they should have been saying all along.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's funny because I would always say, even before we knew that Joss was a total piece of shit, I would even like, and of course I was one of the people that'd be like, oh, he's such a good writer. But even back then I would be like, but it is everyone involved. It's not because you could write a good script and there'd be bad actors that look like they're taking a shit when they're delivering the lines. Right. Like, and none of these actors, at least none of the main actors, never, even the weakest one of the bunch, never feels like truly terrible at acting. So I've always felt like Buffy was a combined effort of everyone involved.
Yeah, I've always found that very easy too, especially because I watched it from such a young age. I hadn't really had the nuanced kind of attribute to Joss. So I was just being like, these people, woohoo, like I was obsessed with them. So I feel like it's very easy for me to kind of compartmentalize it all, even though his writing is, a huge part of what makes it so.
Right. Yeah.
I thought he was a lady until like 2017. I'm being real honest, because I just like I've never seen any of the other things that he's ever done.
Okay.
And I just so strongly associated like just like end credits, and I don't know, I thought Joss was a lady name. Like I truly did not know until people were like starting to talk about all this stuff. I was like, oh my god, like I thought Buffy was written by, I thought everyone was like always hyped about Buffy because it was written by a woman.
That's the fun thing. I will tell you that when his name started being brought up a lot, I thought I was so cute because I was like, I am gay and I can tell that this must have been written by a gay man because straight men can't write women that well. And like I would be like, oh, I know he's got to be gay. Oh, I'm sure he's like cool and gay. And then he was the opposite of those things.
Yeah, the cool no gay, actually.
Yeah.
Well, thank God that neither women nor gay men have to claim him.
Right, yeah. So she mallets the fucking shit out of his bones, starts crying, and Angel comes in and like she leans on him, and I don't know, Sarah Michelle Gellar is just so good that like, this is like in the realm of like sad Buffy scenes, this is nothing. But even this, I was like finding myself a little emotional, right? Like I think of, she's like literally smashing her trauma, right? Like that skeleton is representative. Here is your trauma laid out on this table, and she's gonna smash it to pieces. And I don't know, I like that.
I'm not sure if I'm just like not, I'm thinking back at the time I wasn't old enough, I guess. But was this whole kind of episode dealing with trauma quite ahead of its time, or was there like a lot of shows kind of doing this?
I think
so.
It
feels ahead of its time, but obviously you've got more context than me, I assume.
Did you just call me old?
Maybe I did.
No, but yeah, I do think, like Jamie Lee Curtis, when she was doing the tour for Halloween Kills, that was like the joke because she was always saying trauma. And a lot of horror stuff talks about that. Even like, WandaVision even touched upon that with like superheroes. But I do think that I don't remember many shows even doing this. And I mean, like you said, Lydia, it is because it's a show wrapped up in one episode, but it's still, I think back then, a big deal that we even got the one episode, because most genre shows especially would just like breeze past it, right? It'd be like, oh, one of the main characters died last episode. The next episode, no one even mentions that character's name and they're just moving on. So yeah, I appreciate getting this. And if there was a way to wrap it up in one episode, I feel like that's a good way, is have like a physical thing that embodies her trauma that she could rip apart, right? Yeah. So then, we cut to the next day. Cordy's talking to Miss Calendar. I love
that interaction. Yeah, no, I wrote about it. But
all right, Lydia, talk about that. Yes.
Yeah, well, I just love that there's this sort of scene, and you talked about this earlier. People sometimes talk, even in the show, to Cordelia as if she's like kind of like flighty or dizzy, or that she like, doesn't really, or she's doesn't know what's going on. But she talks about how there's so much like blood and grime on her clothes, and she has this line, I wrote it down: you can dry clean till judgment day, but those stains will stay with you forever, which is like actually really deep. And Miss Callan just kind of writes it off like, yeah, the worst thing about that was the stains, but I was like, no, she was really like onto something. Like she was speaking in metaphor. Like that was actually that was a profound line, and it's funny to me that Miss Calendar is like, yeah, Cordelia doesn't get it.
Yeah, I do really like that interaction. I also just like seeing them paired together because I don't feel like we get that often. Then we get Giles and Buffy walking. The show does that well too with the high school scenes when it's like, well, everyone's there, so they're just like crossing paths. Like I do like that. We see that Buffy does feel guilty, right? She's like worried about seeing everyone. She tells Giles she can't face them, and Giles is kind of like, it'll be fine. You're fine. And then she walks into class, and Harrison, what happens?
Well, I actually wrote down worst thing about the episode right now, so get ready. But she sits down, and obviously Willow and Xander like just treat her like nothing's ever happened, and they're still like really good mates, and she smiles, and everything's fine. But the piano music over the top is one of the worst things I've ever heard. It's given like the worst Sims menu music, and then like your laptop freezes and you've got to listen to it for like ages before it goes off. It's so shit. It's given like, my friend said it's so Dawson's Creek, and he's like correct. And it goes on for ages as well. It's just like constant plonking for like, oh god, it's so bad. I'm so glad they ditched those like truly like teen drama-y things like as it kind of goes on.
Yeah, but I do agree with you. But the important thing is they saved a seat for her and they are welcoming to her, right?
Yeah.
I even think Xander gets a good line in here. I love when he's like, when they're like, oh, what are we going to do? And he's like, well, we could ground our enemies into talcum powder, but gosh, we did that last night. Like, I think that's a good Xander line. Right? Yeah.
Or like the tone of the show, like summed up.
And what's funny is that you mentioned the music is that the piano that plays after she smashed the Master's bones is like brief enough that it works, right? But this, so but also horrible. This was Christoph Beck's first episode doing the like background music, and he's so good, right? Like later on, he's like great. I mean, I think of, or wait, was he not there for the final? No, that he was for the final season, and he does that like when she's standing up. Like that's an amazing score that plays.
And did he do the score from The Gift when she's like jumping off the thing? Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. So we all have a learning curve when we start a new job.
Sure.
So I think it's cute. Willow's like, oh, Wednesdays are beats. I like that we see that like they understood she went through. Like she wasn't just like being mean. It was like she was traumatized and depressed, and they kind of realize that, and they don't need her to apologize. They don't need her to talk about it. They're like, oh, you're good, we're good. And I feel like that's the sign of like true like good friends, right?
Definitely.
Where like, although I might be the one that's like, do you want to talk about it? Like you can tell me. I would be the annoying one that's doing that.
I would be as well. I need to have a chat.
But I like that they don't, and they understand what happened. Like not understand, but they get it, right?
No, I think that scene is like so needed, and even like the scene like just right before where she's talking to Giles, and he acknowledges to her that she has made a mistake, and you can see her like hear that and like actively seek redemption. I feel like some shows that have like nuanced main characters, eventually they make so many mistakes like in a row that you're like, I'm no longer rooting for you. Like
yes,
you sort of see that happen with like Piper and like Orange is the New Black, when it's like, now I actively hate you, and I dislike everything you're doing. And I think that like these little nuggets, and she gets them like I think often enough. She doesn't always get them at the end of every episode, but like again, enough that you're like, okay, like it's fine that you've made all these mistakes. Like not only is she seeking forgiveness, but like the characters in the show that you also love are also, you see them give it to her. So I think that gives like the audience permission to like let it go too.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think honestly of like nearly all Buffy moments, this is one of the ones where I'm most like, that was really out of order. Like this is one of her worst selfish moments in my opinion, like the way she behaved in the Bronze. So I feel like the show is really good at, never really making her do anything that feels unforgivable. Like it's always kind of realistic and everyone kind of gets on with it well. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And I even like the like silly kicker we get after that music finally ends, of the Anointed One just saying, I hate that girl, in his like little kid voice.
Honestly, like his only good moment in my opinion. I think he's one of the worst characters ever.
I agree. I wanted so much from him. I also wrote down little Tim Cook, because he's turtleneck, because he's got the silliest haircut and like the silliest turtlenecks. But I usually like characters like that. Like I think it's silly and funny, and I wish that we would have gotten like something from him. But he's like so forgettable.
He's so jarring. And I'm so glad, because I think originally he was meant to be the big bad of the season, right, Ian?
Yeah,
but they were going to have him as like the main villain. I'm so glad like Spike comes in and kills him off in like a second. I think that is just thank God, because it would have been a completely different show. Like if they'd gone the other way.
I have faith that maybe they would have made it work, but he just, he doesn't get much to do, right? Even in season 1, it's like, why did we have him here? He just walks her to the Master. That's it.
Yeah.
And that is all he does, right?
It's like
he
all
doesn't
hype
even-
and no payoff with him, like the whole
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that they still keep him there, even though they would have been fine to keep going without him, right? Like, if this was just random vampires want to bring back the master and they get his bones and they capture everyone, I would have been like, yeah, that works. But I appreciate they do a good job of wrapping up the leftovers from season 1 in this episode.
No, that's actually a really good point. And, in hindsight, I actually, mad props for those writers to be like, this is what we thought we were going to do, but it's not working. So let's tie it up and then move on.
Yeah.
You've changed my mind.
I wonder if it was
good.
I wonder if it was like a qualm with the actor who played him that like I feel like he just gets like minimal lines even though he's in charge. Like I think he'd be way more interested if he was giving like speeches or something or like making the plans. He just kind of like sits about and everyone else talks.
I think Baby Vampire is hilarious.
Yeah, and imagine like them making a baby vampire like shitty like Glory, like giving him the lines like ridiculous over the top camp shit like Glory got. I would have loved that, right? Okay, we are at the end, and I have some very important questions. But first, what do we think Dawn would have been doing in this episode? Harrison, I'm going to call on you first.
I actually think this is one of the hardest episodes to kind of slot her in because I don't think she would have anything to do. I asked my friend and he said she'd be going to watch Jurassic Park 2 and I was like, so true. I think they'd probably get a scene where, Buffy was like extra spiteful to her and like an argument around the dinner table or something like that just to show that Buffy was like, in like not a good mood.
Yeah.
I can't really, obviously she wouldn't have been at the school with them. She wouldn't have been kidnapped because she wasn't near to the body at the time. So, because at first I was like, oh, she'd definitely been kidnapped. And then I remembered like the rule of the spell. So yeah, I feel like would be a bit spare part in this one.
Lydia?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm not feeling the creative juices flowing. Obviously, she'd be around the house maybe when the parents were around and maybe gotten the brute of some of Buffy's meanness, but I'm not sure I see how she would fit in either.
Okay, so what I came up with was either Dawn would have been at the school in Prophecy Girl and she would have been kidnapped, or because like also it would depend on, and I don't think we ever get a definitive answer when Dawn found out her sister was the Slayer, right? I don't think so. If she hadn't, then I said she would have been really grumpy about coming back and having to go to school after like their dad, he said he bought Buffy some clothes and stuff, would have spoiled her. Otherwise she would have been relegated to the scenes with Joyce.
Yeah. It would have been quite fun though if like maybe she, if she was there in Prophecy Girl and then got caught and then like realized Buffy was a Slayer, like then having her and Buffy having the secret of the whole season together and
right,
and Joyce not knowing that'd have been pretty cool.
I do think that would have been cute. Okay, favorite outfit, Lydia?
Oh, I think I have to go with Miss Calendar's. And I talked about it earlier. She's got this like midi skirt. She's got this leather jacket. She's got these chunky shoes. It's so good. It's so iconic. I love that.
Fair. Harrison?
I refuse to give my favorite outfit to Xander, so I'm just ignoring it. But even though I said I'd wear everything that he wore this episode, which is great.
Yeah.
My favorite is actually Buffy's Chibo Mato red dress. I think she looks really good in it. I think the way she really, she owns that room when she walks in. Even though it's kind of a plain dress, she just wears it like it's just cool as fuck. Like,
yeah. I think my favorite outfit, I gotta go with, I liked the pinkish tank top with the black leather jacket and like that chunky cross. I think she looks great. Anytime, I think Buffy always wears a leather jacket well. So, favorite scene, Harrison?
Mine is the dance scene, even though I've moaned about it the whole time. I love the music so much that I don't care that she's being like so out of character. I just think it's so satisfying to watch, and I love that kind of lo-fi, like late 90s electronica. Like it really hits my spot. So the whole thing I feel like it's one of them first Buffy moments where I'm like, okay, I know that the show's going to have really cool music going forward. Like that's how it feels. I love it.
Fair. Lydia?
Definitely Cordelia running out of the bronze to have that little confrontation with Buffy. I just think that's so good.
Yeah, that's mine too. I think about that scene a lot. Like that's like I feel like one of the first big like Buffy Cordelia scenes that we get.
Apart from the ones in like in Out of Mind, Out of Sight, I feel like there's a really good one where she talks about never being alone.
That's true.
That's where I was like, okay.
What grade do we give this episode, Lydia?
Oh, I think it's a good one. I liked how it like brings everything in. It's not like I think the most memorable Buffy episode, but like I'm not unsatisfied at all. So either like I'm giving A-, B+ sort of range.
All right, fair. Harrison?
I gave it a B. I think it's a really solid Buffy episode, but like I said, it's at the start. It just doesn't really ever edge into that like truly wow moment. Like, you know, if you were just thinking of those like standout Buffy episodes, it's never been in the conversation for that. But I think it's a good opener. It resolves everything really well and starts the new kind of tone of the show going forward for season 2 really good as well.
Yeah, I give it a B+ because I kind of agree with what all of y'all said. Thank you both for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's so good.
Thank you all for listening. If you like Slayerfest 98, you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can support us on Patreon, where we are finishing up Harley Quinn Season 2. We're going to move on to Season 3, probably after we finish What If Season 1. And any and all support is much appreciated. You can join our Discord server. And if you want to follow us on social media, we are at SlayerFestX98. If you want to follow me, I am at IanXCarlos. Harrison, where can everyone find you?
You can find me at Harrison J. Brock on Twitter and Instagram and anywhere else you want to find me.
And Lydia, where can everyone find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Kit Kittredge, KLIT.KLITTREDGE. That was a test of my spelling, but I think I passed.
I am so glad you had trouble, because every time I've looked you up, I've forgotten to put the I spell that incorrectly, and I think there's like 2 other accounts that like have it spelled differently, maybe.
Yeah, there are a couple now, and also I think because it's kind of inappropriate that Google doesn't really want to give it to you, like it can be hard.
Fair. All right, everyone. Well, this was our first episode in our 25th anniversary Buffy season 2 coverage, and we will be doing more. We'll see you next time. Bye.